Hello, I'm Sue Andersen, grief guide and yoga teacher, dedicated to helping individuals navigate the challenging journey of loss. Welcome to Growth from Grief, where I aim to offer strategies to transition from the depths of grief to the path of healing. Whatever loss you are grappling with, here you'll discover support to ease both the physical and emotional burdens of grief. Together, let's embark on a journey toward strength, peace, and healing. I'm so glad you are here. Hello. Welcome to this episode of Growth from Grief. I'm Sue Andersen. And if you are a returning listener, welcome back. And if you're new, I welcome you to this healing space where we talk about loss, we talk about grief. My guests and I talk about their stories, they share what's helped them, and we can find community here and acknowledge that we are not alone in our grief. It's natural, loss is natural, and processing that grief just helps us to find that joy and that hope as we continue down this path. So welcome. Today's episode is really close to my heart. I'm going to be sharing about the recent loss of our beloved dog, Queenie, and what it means to grieve the deep bond that we share with our animal companions. Pet loss is universal. If you've had a pet, I don't think it actually matters how long you've had that pet, but if you have a strong bond, that loss is really tough. It hurts. And if you are a person that doesn't have a pet or never had a pet, maybe that seems a little odd to you that people would be so upset about losing their dog. But let's come back to loss is loss, right? So it doesn't matter if it's a person, a pet, a place, a job, a relationship, it's still loss. It's natural, and we grieve that loss. And with a pet, it can be really intense, I think, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, why it might feel so intense. But I want to dedicate this episode to Queenie and her memory, which you can tell by my voice. She's still really, really close to my heart. And I guess part of the reason that I'm feeling still this grief surface that's on the surface, right? It's just bubbling up, is because I don't think I really took a lot of time to grieve her when we lost her on March 17th. There was a lot of other things happening in our lives. We were doing work on our house, so we were in a rental. We had some sickness, and it just seemed like a whirlwind. And recently, after talking with my therapist, she was like, oh, I don't think you've really grieved the loss of your dog. You haven't taken that time. And she's definitely right. I haven't. And so I want to talk a little bit about her first. So Queenie is the fourth dog that we've had in our lives, and we adopted her in April of 2020, so beginning of COVID, right? And she was, I guess, 9 at the time when we adopted her. And kind of a funny story about this is my husband was the person who was, scouring all of the like Pet Finder and those sites to try to find a dog to adopt. And he came across this posting for a private adoption for a beagle. And we saw her picture, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is her, this is the dog we should adopt." So we made arrangements for the owner to come with the dog and stop by so we could meet the owner and the dog. And it was so funny when we met, because it turns out that the owner and Queenie lived a street away from us. But they had moved. So they moved probably, I guess, a couple of years, two or 3 years before we adopted her. And so when she came to our house and we met in the front lawn, because again, COVID, we both were like, wait a minute, we know each other. We used to walk our dogs. We'd pass by each other. So that sort of cemented the deal for us, because we remembered her and we knew the owner, just to say hi, just like, a neighbor to say hi, recognize. So that was kind of funny. So we adopted her, and took a little bit of time to get her settled in. But I mean, right away she was spoiled, right? So we just, bought her a new bed, and, she had, rain over the furniture. We let her sleep on the couch, and, she could sleep on the bed, all that kind of stuff. But she loved to walk. And so because we were in COVID, and lockdown, I just relished the fact that she loved to walk, and I could take her on long walks, short walks, whatever. And that was great, right? She was, as a hound, right? I mean, in the hound family, as a beagle, I mean, you didn't actually really walk very far. You walked, she had to sniff everything. So it took a long time to go around the block, but that was fine. And we enjoyed that, as did Bill, as did my husband. We really enjoyed taking her out. And, we would take her out 4 or 5 times a day, and she loved it. She loved being outside. We could not, however, let her roam around, because she did not, she wanted to explore. She wanted to follow rabbits. So if she was in the backyard, we had a long rope that we attached to her harness so she could kind of run around in the backyard. But we didn't have a fence at the house, so she wasn't able to be fenced in. So that was just great, during lockdown and having that comfort. And soon, like with any pet, you get into a routine, right? So you get into a routine of you're getting up at whatever time to feed your pet, to take them for a walk if they need to go for a walk. Whatever the care is, you have that routine that you go through. But they're also there for emotional support, right? You're having a crappy day. That dog, that cat, whatever your pet is, they can provide that comfort, whether you're, brushing them, petting them, they're curling up on your lap, whatever comforting action you do for that pet and that pet does for you, that's just wonderful. If you're having, like I said, if you just need some emotional support, you're having a tough day. And they're also there as a silent companion, right? So you're watching TV and you just want that, little cuddle. And if you have a cat or a dog, they're great for cuddling. But I think even if you have a bird, I remember we had a bird when I was growing up, it was just kind of nice to have the bird in the room and making a little bit of noise. And you still had that routine, right? So if you ever had a bird, or if you have a bird now, you put the cover on at night, you you said goodnight, whatever, and you had that routine. So that was helpful, I think, that companionship. Oh gosh, when she got sick, this is the odd thing, right? I mean, this dog was healthy. Again, just loved walking. So she would walk all over the place, 14 years old. But we had kind of a little bit of a scare where she had something caught in her jaw. We thought she ate a bone. My husband had taken her for a walk. He didn't know what she had grabbed. And so her jaw was kind of open. And this was, of course, at night, So I took her to the emergency vet, that was open. And they took it out of her mouth. And they said, oh, this is a black walnut pod. And of course, I didn't know this, but they said, oh, this can be toxic to the dog. And because part of it was chewed up, we didn't know if she had chewed it or not. So then they sent me to the dog a pet emergency hospital, which was the 24-hour place. So we went there, and, all her vital signs looked fine. We couldn't tell if she had chewed anything. But basically the vet said, look, we think she's fine. At this time, they didn't do any blood work, and I was fine with that because she appeared to be perfectly fine, 3, 4, 5 hours after she had this thing in her mouth. So they said, if she starts to get lethargic, and these other symptoms, doesn't want to eat, doesn't go to the bathroom, whatever, then, bring her back in. So that was on a Thursday night, and we got back about 1 a.m. And then Friday, she seemed fine, took her out. By Saturday, she was really lethargic, like she didn't, sort of happened Friday night too. So I was like, oh, wow, something's not right because this is not this dog, right? So I bring her back to the emergency, the 24-hour place, and they do a blood test. And they come back to tell me that she had this blood cancer that was fatal. I mean, it had nothing to do with eating this black walnut pod. And, basically there was nothing to do. Absolutely nothing to do. That, this was something that her... would take over, and maybe she would last a week or a month, but she's coming to the end of her life. So talk about shock. I mean, oh my gosh, it was awful. It was terrible for my husband and I. We just were in complete shock, right? So, by Monday, it became very clear that she was suffering. I mean, Sunday night, she was trying to get comfortable. She couldn't get comfortable. She didn't want to drink anything. She didn't want to eat anything. So we had to bring her back in and say goodbye. And it was, as I said, it was just a whirlwind, right? It was literally Thursday to a Monday. And really, from the blood test, it was just Saturday to Monday. So it was difficult to process, really. And as I mentioned earlier, we also had this issue of, health issues. We both ended up getting sick. So taking care of, me taking care of Bill taking care of, just taking care of each other. And then with all the stuff going on in the house, it was just difficult, so difficult. And, now that we're back in the house, our house, not in the rental, and the weather is nice, and this is the time that she loved to be walking, in the nice weather and exploring all the stuff. Oh my gosh, every time I go for a walk, that's all I think about. So, why does this hit so hard? Why do we think this hits so hard? Well, unconditional love, right? And loyalty. Pets are loyal. They give you unconditional love. There's no arguing. There's no fighting. There's no wondering. It's just, they're there. And you just miss their presence. They're there in our most vulnerable moments, quiet times of our life. They love us and we love them. That's it, right? That's it. I mean, the closeness that you get, the joy that you get, certainly outweighs some of the aggravation, because let's face it, caring for a pet, sometimes you don't feel like getting up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever time it is to take the dog for a walk or feed the cat, feed the bird, whatever. But, they're there and they're supporting us. I think having that, that daily presence, that's somebody there when there's something going on in your life. It's great to come home and there's your pet, right? It's great to come home and be greeted. Or I think sometimes you just know they're there, right? Even if they're not in the room waiting for you. It's nice to have that other presence. But grief is difficult. Society sometimes dismisses or just downplays pet grief. I mean, let's face it, sometimes they just downplay grief of any kind or loss. We certainly have heard it's been X amount of time, you should be over that by now. People that dismiss and don't understand the importance of the grieving process. And I think that, you don't need to wait for any permission, social permission. Nobody needs to tell you it's okay to grieve your pet. You just grieve your pet. What was nice for us is that we got some sympathy cards from friends that also had this experience and knew how it felt. Or we got the phone calls or the plant, So that was just wonderful. It was great. But I think, again, you don't need anyone's permission to grieve. And you should grieve. You should allow yourself to feel that pain and cry. And then letting that out, letting that emotion out, opens you up for that joy, remembering that joy, right? I think also there's something unique about having to make this end-of-life decision. Who wants to do that? No one wants to do that, I mean, wow, that's hard. That's really, really hard. But you have to, in the case of a pet, you have to just think of that pet, right? I mean, I didn't want this dog to suffer. I didn't want Queenie to suffer. I saw her suffering. She had no quality of life. It was time. It was time to let her go. Sometimes We have to do it, and it's so difficult. This vet, they were so wonderful. You know, they were just so wonderful, allowing me to stay with her while the drug was given, and just be with her, and that was just lovely. It was just what I needed, and maybe what she needed too, right? So I talked about permission to feel the pain, right? Just give yourself that permission. Grief is grief. You got to let it out. You got to express it. Whatever pet you have, whatever the species, it doesn't matter. And sometimes, you know, rituals really help with this. You know, I know people who have had, you know, a little funeral for their pet. I'm sure I did, because I had gerbils, I had a hamster, I had a bird growing up, and I'm sure that I had a little ritual of burying that pet. I don't actually remember it, but I'm sure I did. You know, other people have a little photo corner or an altar. I like to talk to Queenie when I walk. Just remembering her. I think that's another thing. I know that there are artists who can, you know, create a portrait, paint a portrait of your pet. And actually, I was thinking about that for our 4 dogs that we've had. So growing up, I never had a dog, but when I was first married, my first husband, we had a little dog that was unfortunately had a lot of health issues. But, you know, that was the first dog that I had. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have like a little, you know, small, like, you know, 4x4 or something like that size, little either photos or drawings or paintings of the 4 pets that we had, the 4 dogs. I might kind of like that and have a little pet corner, you know, with the 4 dogs. Anyway, that's just something I'm thinking of. But it's nice to do something like that, you know, to think about that. My dog Queenie would periodically come in when I was teaching yoga online, you know, and lay on the mat. So sometimes I think about her when I'm teaching, but also, you know, use this breath work that I've talked about before. This 3-part breath, the you know, box breath. There's a lot of different breathing techniques that that you can use, you can utilize to help you as you feel these sensations, you feel the heaviness, you know, you start to get anxious or feel stress. You know, all of this breath will help. And I'll talk a little bit more about that breath, doing a little bit of reflection shortly. But I think breath work is really helpful. I know other people have done things like energy work, like Reiki, to help them with their grief. So that's another thing to look into. Certainly movement, as we talked about, you know, walking, maybe writing a letter to your pet, you know, writing in a journal. That's also another idea. So let's just take a moment And just reflect. So if you are listening and you've lost a pet, or if you're listening and you've experienced any loss, not a pet, recently, and you just want to take a moment here. And I'm going to invite you to find a comfortable seat. Now, if you're listening in your car, you can still do this, just don't close your eyes. But just feel the ground beneath your feet, or seated in a cushion, or maybe you're walking as you're listening to this, and you can feel the feet on the ground, or the forest floor, the sand, the lawn, wherever you are. So you have that nice grounded feeling. And close your eyes if you're able to. But even if you are not able to close your eyes, you can still bring to mind a memory with your pet that makes you smile. And as you bring this memory, maybe take just a nice deep inhale through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. Maybe another inhale. Exhale. If you like, you can go into a deeper breath by inhaling into the belly, into the chest, the rib cage, and then the upper chest. So your whole front body is filled with breath, and then slowly exhale, starting with the upper chest. Feel the rib cage as it contracts, the belly as the navel goes back to the spine. So that's a 3-part breath. Inhaling into the belly, into the rib cage, and into the top of the chest, almost to the throat. And then letting it out. Slowly, slowly, belly button to the spine. Come back to your natural breath. Make a little movement if you can. I'd love to hear your stories. So you can send those to me on my email, sueandersonyoga@gmail.com. You can also write a little note here in the podcast, leave a little review. Get in touch with me on social media. I just love to hear your stories. So in closing, I'd really like to thank you for holding space with me today. Let's acknowledge that grief is a form of love with nowhere to go. We need to take the time to let it out, to express it, to feel it, to honor it. And I'd like to invite you again to visit my website, where I have a number of resources, sueandersonyoga.com. Listen to other podcast episodes. Write a review on Apple or Spotify. I also have a free grief resource that you can download. And I'll leave you with this quote from Queen Elizabeth II. Grief is the price we pay for love. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.